Tag the Eve, August Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. It's John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School, and we are here with our weekly check-in, chat, and coffee talk. So, we have a question in here today, which is an interesting one, and it crosses over with my type of nerdetry and my views on our existence and our universal existence, not just our planetary existence. And it comes in from Miss Gamora, who was wondering, I'm curious what the native view is on modern alien abductions and fairy abductions, because I've noticed many similarities between the two. I've also noticed that sudden death syndrome, such as death during childbirth, is also linked with the fairy folk, and I'd like to know if that is the case, if that is the case, or it's meant symbolically. Or do they truly believe she died during childbirth, for example, because of the fairies? Thank you. Okay, so it's a great question. It's a very interesting question. And I can understand where the comparatives kind of come from, because when we talk about the Irish mythology, there is one particular line in a particular translation of the Cathbhaigtura, the first battle of Moytura, which comes from the Lyric of All Éireann. If you've followed any of the videos in here, and you've probably heard me talk about it quite a bit, but it kind of Lyric of All Éireann forms the heart of the mythological cycle of Ireland's history, or Ireland's kind of mythological history of the existence of peoples in our island. It doesn't deal with the creation of the world. That is one thing that, we do get asked. There is no creation myth of the world and all its existence in Irish lore or Irish folklore that we have ever come across, which differs from many other cultures out there where there's talk of, either some father god, mother god, someone becoming like, the land, or someone becoming the sky, and then the birthing of reality, the birthing of the world through that process. We don't actually have that. We have like Ireland just always existing. Ireland just always was. And then we have the peoples coming to and from the Ireland, which is why we get this book known as Invasions, or the Taking of Ireland. So in one particular translation of the Cath Moytura, which is the first battle of Moytura, which talks about the Tuatha Danann returning into Ireland. Now, the Fir Bolg are in Ireland already, one of the previous descendants of the tribe of Nemeth, who had emigrated and then immigrated back into the country. And it is their king Uchud who has a vision. He goes to his druid and asks the druid to kind of cast the augurs and find out what the vision really means. And the druid translates the vision, and it's like, yeah, there's another tribe of people coming, a fleet of 1,000 heroes, and they're like skilled in every art and every kind of skill in all the arts of druidry, and the art of death, and they will be victorious in every strain. So that is the first kind of descriptor we have of the Tuatha Danann from the Fir Bolg point of view of this vision. But there's one particular line that it says the Tuatha Danann descended on the top of a mountain in their ships from the sky. Now, that is one particular translation. There is other translations. It's like their ships landed and came out of the mists, or like further reworking or re-exploration of the mythology says that when their ships arrived, to show their resolve to stay in Ireland, they burned their ships. Having come from the other lands, they were like, no, we are home to the land of our ancestors. So they burned their ships, and that's what caused kind of clouds of smoke and mist. Or there's the mystical elements in that they are practitioners of all the druidic arts, and we see later on in the stories when the Sons of Mill arrived, like they're capable of summoning a magical mist, and storms to kind of keep the Milesians off of the island. So there are many different perspectives to take on the arrival. But there are many people who have latched onto this one particular translation of the arrival, ships from the sky, and that means the Tuatha Danann are aliens. For us here in the Irish Pagan School, no, the Tuatha Danann are not aliens. And actually, from myself and Laura and our stance on things, we actually, there's another great channel on YouTube. It's called PBS Spacetime, and it is a physicist who kind of talks about the science of physics, our universe, our galaxy, and he actually does a video. I might link it in the description. How do we know it's aliens? And the rule really is it's never aliens, but every rule has an exception, so it's never aliens, until it's aliens. And that is then the burden of proof really falls on the person discovering these traces or these informations. And you go through a lot of the very common kind of phenomena that have been observed in the last decade or more, which people say, is it aliens, isn't it aliens? And how many of those we have learned more information since, and we can explain with naturally occurring phenomenon. But there are other stuff which still we can't explain. So it's an ongoing process of this process. And both Laura and myself do believe it is the height of pride and hubris to think that humanity is the only intelligent creature to exist in all of our galaxy, in all of our universe. Like, do the fucking math. You know, we are one planet in the habitable zone of one particular star, and how many stars are in the sky? A lot of this is covered on that channel, actually, which is a great resource from a scientific point of view, which I quite enjoy myself. But yeah, both of us believe that there are, like, you know, there is life outside of our world. And the pursuit of that knowledge, like, you know, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is important. And I think we should be trying to expand our understanding of reality and our position in the galactic stance and in the universal stance by those explorations. But at no point at the moment can we say unequivocally that, you know, it's aliens or that aliens have visited the planet or have abducted people from the planet. So our stance at the moment is that it's not aliens because we can't say that it is aliens. So there are other people out there and other people living in Ireland who claim, like, you know, that it is aliens and that it's modern alien crossover and that the Tuatha Dé Danann are aliens. And, you know, the burden of proof falls on the person making those announcements and making those discoveries. Like, from our stance, we can point at the cultural history, we can point at the mythological history, we can point at all of these resources, and it clearly says that the Tuatha Dé Danann are descended from Nemeth. They're descended from a previous tribe who had existed in Ireland, and all of these tribes came out of the east into Ireland and finding Ireland empty. You know, we have now, again, a lot of this is tagged on to biblical history, which, you know, has its own complexities. But when we look at the archaeology, as I covered in a previous video, we can say categorically that there were at least stone tool wielding hominids, which is a scientific term for either, you know, Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthalensis. I think Homo habilis also used stone weapons, early ancestors of humanity. But we can say that, like, 30,000 years ago, there were animals being butchered by stone tools in Ireland, you know, which kind of throws the whole current model of the Ice Age covering Ireland for that period into question as well. So there's a lot that we don't know, and there's more evidence coming out all of the time. And so I would not state categorically 100% it can't ever be. We're against the existence of. No, but what we are saying is there's not evidence, there's not information, there's not enough details to point to that. Now, that seems like a bit of an oxymoron, because here I am talking about the belief of gods, the belief of, like, you know, life, the Unsale Ella, the other world, the belief of the people of the She in our island. And so how does that conflict with the existence of aliens? And for me, it doesn't, because I do believe that aliens exist, but I can't say that they have visited. What I can say from my own experience, from the experience of my partner, from the experience of many people I have shared life, my 40 years of life with on this planet, and the documented experiences of people in the National Folklore Collection, in all of our old mythology, about, you know, what has happened on our landscape, and those energetic experiences that I personally have had and helped other people kind of process through when they navigate our landscape. There is other things that we do not know about, and that all of the information points to the existence of the other crowd, the She, the fair folk, the good neighbors, whichever way it goes. And that's where we lead into the other aspect of Miss Gamora's question, which is the sudden death aspects, the sudden death syndromes. And yeah, there is a cultural kind of concern around that. And that's why when we kind of take things back in our history, there was a big hullabaloo around a pregnancy or a birth being carried to term at home. Now, that was very common practice before our modern days of medicine and our modern understandings of medicine. And there are many things that we can now look back and explain. It's like, okay, well, this is what has actually happened, or scientifically speaking, this is what actually occurred there. But there are other instances where it just something goes off, or some coincidences or a series of coincidences happen, and that leads to the loss of an individual, either at birth or suddenly in their lifestyle and lifetime, or maybe because of their lifestyle. You never know. So that's when the other cultural narratives come in, and that's when the other experiences come in, and it's important to be skeptical. Like, a healthy level of skepticism is important. Otherwise, we lose ourselves to the fanciful, and our ego gets suppressed, and we no longer become functioning like healthy ego balanced individuals. I did a video about that as well. Like, the understanding of self. I think it was a blog post over at the Irish Pagan School blog. Um, it's very, very important to cultivate a healthy sense of ego, cultivate a healthy sense of who you are as yourself, like your spiritual sensibility, spiritual sensitivity, and your personal sovereignty. Because all of these things then, you know, safeguard your own identity about from becoming subsumed by the larger experiences, the larger energies out there, deities, other crowd, anything like that at all. It's crucially important to have a healthy ego. And part of having a healthy ego is a certain level of skepticism. And so I will not just say I'm a full-on skeptic, I don't believe anything. I have my beliefs, and I'm open to my beliefs being challenged. That's the other side of it, because as much as I may say I believe this, or it is true to me, that doesn't mean that there won't be some shift in our understanding of perspectives, or a shift in our understanding of, the facts that then allow us to look at things in a different way. Um, like, we knew, for example, that there were some things that would impact on a body from distances, and it's only now, as our science has caught up, that we can measure things like X-rays, we can measure things like, various forms of radiation, and understand what they're actually doing to a body. But that doesn't mean that those things never happened before in the past. It just means that we didn't have an understanding of it. We didn't have a recognition of it. Or if we did, that knowledge is lost to us, because, again, the age, like, there's been so many mass extinction events on our planet. It is the height of hubris to think that, we're the epitome of everything that has ever happened before. When we look at the archaeological architectural circumstances that exist on our planet, there are many questions that shows the level of intellect that our ancient ancestors had. Brunabóinne, like, the passage to in Brunabóinne aligns with the solstice, and still aligns with the solstice thousands of years later. When we look at the archaeological alignment, or the architectural construction of, say, the stepped pyramids in South America, but then also the pyramids in the Giza Plateau, like, the understanding of mathematics to be able to do and create something like that, it really shows that our ancestors were smarter than we have given them credence for, but also that, here we are thousands of years later, and yes, we've made great advancements, but have we really advanced as far as our potential can take us? And I don't think that's the truth. We've gotten very complacent and very comfortable in kind of our species, shall we say. But, we can go forward, and we can keep these explorations open, and can learn more. And when we learn more, then it behooves us to reevaluate our perceptions, reevaluate our stance on things, and then find the next step forward in the truth that comes from that moment. So, for ourselves, it's never aliens. But that doesn't mean that we ignore or decry the existence of aliens out there. We think that there is not enough evidence and not enough proof to say things aren't there. So I know this seems very convoluted and very kind of turned around upon itself to a certain degree, because here's me talking about, no, it's not aliens, but it is the other crowd, it is the other folk, it is this other species that are imperceptible to the majority of people on our world, or on the island, for example. Um, so I could be wrong, and I'm open to being shown to be wrong, but it is down to those experiences, and like coming from the documented information of our ancestors, coming from the documented kind of cultures of having protections and wardings. Like there's so many talks of charms, pishogues, and like horseshoes, blacksmiths, all of this kind of information there, how to protect your house, coming up on Bealtaine and making sure you have yellow flowers on like your threshold into your house. Make sure you've done enough cleaning, you've swept out your fires, like you've cleaned everything out. Um, there's a lot of kind of cultural traditions that you might say are just good practice from a point of view of living a rural existence. And yeah, and that might be where it is. But also we have the additional narrative, the additional story that, people who don't sweep out their fireplace or people who don't like get rid of their dirty wash water are prone to, invasion by the other crowd, and, having their life go to anarchy and go to chaos. And I have had personal experiences with that myself. Not from a cleanliness point of view. I've been asked to kind of step in with people and help them figure out why their life has gone to chaos and anarchy. And usually we have to take it back to some element of per practice, per behavior that has led to the invitation of these energies and entities into that person's life, or into that person in the worst case. But that's probably a talk for a different time. So, yeah, the Irish Pagan School stance, both myself and Laura, is that it's never aliens until we can prove that it is aliens. But also, yes, there was and still is a lot of processes, culturally speaking, around defense against the good folk. Now, Laura has done a lot of videos on there as well, good and bad experiences that happen with the other crowd, because no, they're not all benevolent, like, caring creatures of the other world. Like, there's a reason why a lot of the Irish folklore is how to protect yourself from the other fuckers. Mainly because if we take the mythological history as fact, then the Irish people, the Gaels, are descended from the Míle Spáine, the sons of Mill, who were the invading tribe that pushed the Tuatha Danann into the other world, into the Hollow Hills. And that leads to animosity. Like our earliest kind of stories around the Milesians is that Ireland becomes a fucking wasteland because they have acted with dishonor, and it's only restored to abundance and growth with, grain and with milk giving cows when they make friends with the Dagda. So all of these stories come from a place, and all these stories kind of tell us something, but we would be again falling into that trap of pride and hubris if we think that we have the definitive answer to everything and do not need to learn anything anymore. It's important to be skeptical, but it's important to be open. It's important to be curious and to pursue those curiosities. And so it's a really great question to have this question presented, Ms. Gamora, and I really appreciate it. But it's not an easy answer, but I hope I've given some perspective. I hope I've given some kind of insights to answer and speak to your query with us here at the Irish Pagan School. As ever, make sure you pop down if you want to get more of content like this. You want to be reminded when regular content comes out. Go get the free resource that's linked in the description down below. And it kind of connects with what we see as good resources and good ways to kind of pursue your knowledge forward from here, and also put you on the mailing list. So whenever the classes at the end of the month come out, or whatever, like new information comes along, blog posts are released, you'll have the heads up on that. And whenever we have our social gatherings, social spaces, every second Saturday, you'll get your invite for that too, to hang out with Irish Pagan people in the virtual space that we host and provide. So I will say Gurov Mahagat. I will say thank you very much. I will say Slán, which is goodbye. And until next time, take care of yourself, look after yourself. And, it's never aliens until it is. Goodbye.